The December 2nd, 2024 meeting of the West Virginia University Faculty Senate will come to order. The first item of business is approval of the minutes from the November 4th Faculty Senate meeting. The minutes were attached as a link on your agenda. Are there any corrections to the minutes? See no corrections. The minutes are approved. Next up is my report. Faculty Senate leadership continues to represent the faculty through meeting with various committees and administrators across the university. This past month, we have met with both the president and the interim provost about a variety of issues. I've also participated in a variety of meetings, including the Campus Safety Steering Committee. Chair-elect Scott Critchlow and I also participated in the SGA Mixer. This is an event hosted by SGA that brings together representatives of various groups on campus to discuss common concerns. Topics discussed at this semester's Mixer included First Aid Complete, the inconsistency of the experiences and expectations of undergraduate teaching assistants, the costs associated with the use of third-party tech platforms and courses, and campus safety. Fall semester is we're always telling ourselves that things will be better, less chaotic in just a few weeks. Despite this belief, things remain incredibly busy, and we are now entering our truly busy period. Many of us are navigating new waters of changing teaching loads, decreased funding, and a constantly changing environment. I believe that as faculty, we are the most interested and knowledgeable in what we need to improve the faculty experience and morale. It is imperative that we as faculty take ownership of our role in shared governance to identify and work toward viable solutions. We do this through the amazing amount of work undertaken and completed by the Faculty Senate committees. I want to thank each faculty member who works on these committees. The amount of work that I see is amazing. I also want to highlight some efforts being led by the Faculty Senate and their committees to modernize and improve the faculty experience. A topic of great concern to most of us is promotion and tenure. There are two opportunities currently that Faculty Senate is addressing to ensure a modern and fair P&T process for all classifications of faculty. First, the Faculty Senate helps to assemble the University Promotion and Tenure Committee, which provides reviews of all faculty up for promotion and/or tenure. We are still looking for members of this year's committee. This is an important university service opportunity that ensures the faculty's role, our role, in the evaluation of fellow faculty performance. If you are interested in serving on the committee, please reach out to Chris Staples in the provost office. The Faculty Welfare Committee, in addition to the many other activities that they will discuss today, has been leading a process of review of proposed new promotion and tenure guidelines, and recently distributed a survey to faculty across all three campuses to seek feedback. The work on these guidelines has spanned over 3 years, and I want to take a few minutes to discuss the history of the project. The current P&T guidelines were approved, the ones that we are currently evaluated under, in 2014, and they just do not reflect modern academic practice. The university proposed new faculty promotion and tenure guidelines in academic year 2022-2023. At that time, the Office of the Provost held a series of town hall meetings and revised the proposed guidelines several times in response to faculty concerns. In the spring of 2023, a faculty assembly voted down the new guidelines. The major issues identified at that time had to do with the review and non-renewal of tenured faculty and requiring external reviews for all levels of promotion and faculty type. In the 2023-2024 academic year, just last year, a subcommittee of the Faculty Senate Executive Committee took up modifying those proposed guidelines. Through the committee's work and negotiation with the Office of the Provost, the two biggest issues were removed from the document. The current proposed guidelines remove the requirement for external review for all non-tenure track professors at all levels of promotion. Those seeking tenure will still have to be reviewed externally, which is consistent with industry practice. The biggest change in the current proposed guidelines is a broadening of what is to be considered in the annual and promotion review. It acknowledges that the best practices and evaluation of teaching and recognizes the many different types of service that faculty complete. These changes help faculty meet their assigned missions in a larger variety of ways. As we embark on the spring semester, the Faculty Senate will present the proposed guidelines after feedback from the current faculty-wide survey is integrated. This will include a dedicated page on the Faculty Senate website, an FAQ section, and monthly reports on the new guidelines. The Faculty Senate will vote on the proposed document in late spring. As we go forward, it is critical that members of the Faculty Senate communicate with their constituencies about the guidelines and what is and is not included in them. Since this process has spanned 3 years, there's a lot of misinformation, and your help is needed to correct the record. That concludes my report. Are there any questions for me?
Hello, Joe Jones, College of Creative Arts and Media. I do just have one comment from one of my constituents about this tenure document. I'm just going to read this verbatim here. So Section 3, first paragraph, do not remove requirement for service track faculty to require external reviewers for promotion. You can't say in this paragraph they are equally valued and remove this requirement. Many FEPT documents require service track faculty to maintain a national presence in their industry. If you have maintained a national presence, then finding external reviewers is not difficult. A lot of promotion with external reviews is how the director of the school writes the letter to the external reviewer. I mean, basically the gist of this goes on, but basically just the idea that this constituent is concerned that service faculty will no longer be treated as equal if this kind of external review is removed. And I know this was like the sticking point of last year and we removed it all. I'm just going to voice that one of my constituents is very concerned that if you remove this requirement of external review, then this they will not be treated equally to tenure track.
Right. And that is a viewpoint that we have heard before, but we have also heard the viewpoint that achieving enough reviews, getting them done externally, even though you can find reviewers, getting them to complete the reviews is a time-consuming task and challenging for many P&T committees. I would also say that the external review is still allowed as a voluntary option to help establish your national reputation and knowledge base, but it's just the mandatory portion of it has been removed.
Great, thank you, Diane.
Thank you. Any other questions for me? Great. All right. Next up is approval of the consent agenda. The consent agenda is used to approve items that are considered routine or non-controversial. Any member of the Senate could ask for an item to be removed from the consent agenda, and it will be returned to its normal place under committee reports later. By the way, the request to remove something from the consent agenda can be emailed to me or to the Faculty Senate office before the meeting in case you don't want to speak up here. Does anyone wish to have an item removed from the consent agenda? Great. Now we will move to approve the consent agenda. For approval, we have from the Curriculum Committee a new program in Performing Arts Medicine, program changes in Hospitality and Tourism Management, the multi-instrumental area of emphasis, music business and industry, and the new course report attached as Annex 1, the course change report attached as Annex 2, and from the General Education Foundations, a report on the Jeff Committee, a report from the Jeff Committee attached as Annex 3. All of those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye or raise your hand online. Great. Lower your hand online. All those opposed, please say nay or raise your hand online. Thank you. The consent agenda is accepted. Next is a report from the Faculty Welfare Committee Chairperson, Daniel Brewster.
Daniel Brewster, Everly College of Arts and Sciences. We're seeking approval of two templates for the main campus, the Potomac State Kaiser campus, and the Tech Beckley campus, as it relates to a workload plan and evaluation process, and then just a workload plan template. This is a long process as well. Like Diana was talking about with PMT, this is something that is probably about 2.5 years in the making. One of the things that academic transformation I think did positively was allow for a lot of people who are in the silos of our institution to interact and have conversations more openly, learning more about different college practices, departmental practices, unit practices, et cetera. And in general, as it related to the workload plan and the evaluation process, there was incredible discrepancies across the board. So the goal with these two documents was to create a template that can be used by units, ideally supported by faculty, that is brought towards their chair or directors, the deans, et cetera, in a model that's more consistent with kind of planning of kind of future goals. And so the first document that you have is the model annual workload plan and evaluation process. Um, this is just kind of laying out like the general ideal kind of process that would be in place. Some of the things that we learned is that many people in various colleges and units do not really receive any kind of feedback to their evaluation other than the letters that they receive. And so this is a goal-oriented process that would bring forward kind of a unit level planning that's ideally a little bit more than just reactionary, so kind of proactive. So conscious level planning, promoting a conversation between the unit leader and faculty member about their goals, their um, kind of like aspirations, like what do you want to teach, what are your plans for service, what do you want to do for service, because in many ways as it relates to service, people get assigned without any kind of um, opportunity to kind of influence like where they get placed and whatnot. So this kind of process is one that the faculty would assume with the unit leader in a kind of a year-long reflection. We have a date on there of December 31st. Absolutely. We understand my unit as well. We finish ours the day after Labor Day. So this isn't some like in stone kind of approach to this. The workload plan would go in ideally a 2-year model. So this, absolutely upfront, it's going to create a little bit of work, which, like we've heard a lot of feedback from people that some people are concerned that this is adding more work for us to do. But, if you're doing a 2-year plan, at the end of that first year, you're going to go into your meeting for the second year, having already planned out your next year, so pulling that to the front, kind of evaluating like that plan as it relates to what you had just previously, been evaluated on, and then moving forward, subsequently into that next year. And this is a goal that would help in many ways into leading into that second document. This document allows for this is something that is not so this is a combination of plans from all across the various departments and colleges within the WVU system. Some units had no such plan like this. There were people in presenting to faculty welfare who they got an email in, let's say, June saying, you're going to teach 4 classes in the fall. You're going to teach 4 classes in the spring. It didn't tell them what classes they were going to teach. It didn't tell them, anything. You're going to serve on at least one departmental committee. It didn't tell them which committee that was going to be. None of those things. And so this workload plan would be something that you would entertain with your unit, leader and move forward. It also allows, you can see in the second section there, a workload percentage for evaluation period. This is something that FECs deal with, at the departmental level, college level, and university level, where it's not really clear. A lot of times there isn't an MOU or something in place, and so then you're left to kind of search for these things. And so this evaluation period would allow them to to explain why there was an adjustment. Was it a grant? Was it administrative responsibilities or whatever? And then just, here in the teaching, research and service, kind of just of a plan. This is a template. This is a plan of what they would like to do, how it would benefit them professionally as individuals, how it would benefit their departments and units moving forward. Also supporting those types of plans. This isn't going to be, something that's like people are going to be punished for failing to meet this plan. This is something that they're kind of agreeing on and looking at moving forward as it pertains to both research and service the same way. Clearly identifying, what the service is being, held towards. Is it the public? Is it the profession or the university? And then, after a conversation with the unit leader, this is supported. So we presented this to various constituency groups. We presented this to advisory councils. This has been presented to the Dean's Council, et cetera. So lots of feedback that we pulled together to come up with this kind of final draft.
So faculty welfare has introduced 2 items for approval: the model annual work plan and evaluation process, and the faculty workload template. It is important that Faculty Senate will not mandate the use of these documents, but yet they are meant to serve as a resource for the development of similar documents to help equalize the experience of faculty across multiple units, colleges, and regional institutions. Any discussion or questions for the committee? Seeing no further questions or discussions, we will move to a vote. I would like to bundle both documents for a single vote. Is there any opposition to bundling the 2 documents? Okay. All of those in favor of approving the model annual work plan and evaluation process and the faculty workload plan template, please raise your hand. You can lower your hands. Okay, perfect. Thank you. You can lower your hands online. All of those opposed, please raise your hand. All right, thank you. The motion passes. Thank you, Daniel. Next, the curriculum committee report from Darko.
All right, thank you, Diana. I'll be brief as usual. Just know that the brevity of my report is inversely proportional to the number of proposals that we review every review cycle. This review cycle, we have reviewed 68 course proposals and 4 program proposals. And out of those 68 course proposals, 39 were course change proposals and 29 were new course proposals. All the proposals, program as well as course proposals that have passed our review have been included in the consent agenda earlier in this meeting. And that's it.
Any questions for Darko? All right, thank you, Darko.
Thank you, Dan.
Now a report from the chairperson of the General Education Foundations Committee, also known as JEFCO, Cody Hood. Cody?
So one of the initiatives that we'll be covering in the spring semester will be focusing on aligning some of the resources we have from the faculty-facing websites. So this includes some things that we have on KIM, Registrar, as well as the Faculty Senate website. And so the point of me bringing that up here is just in case there's any faculty members who have recently proposed a JEF course that wish to contribute any ways to improve the outward-facing material. We're going to be linking a lot of back to the registrar page instead of having it listed in a bunch of different resources. But in order to clarify that process for anyone, we appreciate any faculty feedback leading up to the spring semester when we're hoping to tackle that.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Cody? Thank you, Cody. Next, a report from the Committee on Committees from Ilkin Bilgescu.
Good afternoon, Ilkin Bilgescu with Statler. You have Annex 6 for information only, where we have one member resigned from Faculty Welfare Committee due to job change and we don't need a replacement as we have more members in the team.
Any questions for Ilkin? Thank you, Ilkin. Now a report from the faculty representative to state government, Eloise Elliott. Eloise.
Thank you. Thank you, Diana. I want to just give a little bit of a report today based on the results of the Advisory Council of Faculty that I'm on, that I represent WVU on. And we had a retreat at Stonewall in early November. So we talk about legislative concerns and then just concerns of the university in general. The different universities, there's 21 universities and colleges in West Virginia. So far, it's really not clear what bills may return or what new bills might be introduced with the changes in the legislature and with the new governor. But the main concerns, I think, right now are the, first of all, a revision of the DEI bill, some kind of a version of that, as well as the bill related to the obscene materials in the libraries. And also, 2 school vaccine exemption bills are expected, and that's of particular concern to health sciences and WVU medicine. And so some of the main issues we hope that the legislature will address is PEIA, campus safety, and there's a student bill that they call Higher Education Health and Aid Grant that they, the Advisory Council of Students are really advocating for, that we should support. In addition to legislative issues, general faculty concerns statewide are very similar to some of our concerns here at WVU. They include inadequate compensation and pay raises, faculty evaluation policies and instruments, lack of transparency and shared governance in PEI. Just a couple of notes about the legislative session, if you're not familiar. It's going to start later this year. It'll start on February 12th and go for 60 days. There'll be a new Senate president, which may be a concern to all of education. We'll have to wait and see. And all those new positions will be assigned this month in December. My report.
Thanks, Eloise. Any questions or comments for Eloise?
Hi, Eloise. Megan Light from the College of Creative Arts and Media. The House Bill 4654, that was the one where they wanted to kind of incriminate art museums for potentially showing what they deemed obscene material. Is that a concern for us? Do we remember that
Say
one?
that again. What was that bill?
That was the one where they want to incriminate like art museums and educators for showing obscene material potentially to minors is the particular focus. But the idea is that any nude theoretically in any class, if I have like 17-year-olds in my art history course, could be prosecuted.
That hasn't really come up anywhere yet. We heard from a number of people at that retreat, some from HEPC, and so far that hasn't been something that's brought up. The only one with the obscene materials was with the library and the museums and things. So I don't
That's
know.
the same one. That's the one.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
talking
well
about,
they think that might come up again.
Okay, can we be like email blasted so that I can like go to Charleston and scream
We,
or
um,
I'm gonna love this gets in the DA.
Yes,
Don't tell them to like.
We need our representatives to go to Charleston, but we have to wait and see. So pretty much the way that we've approached this in the past and the way we're kind of approaching it from a state level as well is kind of wait and see. Don't do anything prematurely. Like we have someone speaking to us at the January meeting about the library. She's a library, the dean of library at Marshall, and she's really an advocate for speaking against this, of course. And so I think it's important for me to know who wants and who will go to Charleston and speak on our behalf for different things as these things come forward, because it's kind of like we don't want to jump the gun because sometimes that makes them think of things. But as soon as we hear the least little thing, we want to make sure we're on the right path. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I'm just concerned, honest, because we do have 16 and 17-year-olds in our courses. So I think minors, that term broadly, is a concern for us as educators here. And I mean, short of literally sending around an attendance sheet, and kind of putting down people's birthdays, I think anybody teaching coursework that might involve this is
That
concerning.
has come up too in, because of the community and technical colleges, they have a lot of students that aren't 18, that they're teaching that are still in high school and so forth. So those kind of things have been discussed. But from from here at WVU, we'll definitely bring that to you as soon as we know a little bit more. And I'll definitely keep you in mind.
Okay, thank you.
So Eloise, if someone has a potential area which they think their legislation and they're interested in speaking, they should send you an email.
That would be great. If it's really hard for me to find people when it comes up, and I need the people that can really speak to the issues. So that would be really helpful if you let me know ahead of time. What are the issues that you feel that you could speak to?
Hi, Kelly Watson Eberly. I'm the director of the Women's and Gender Studies program. My question in many ways is similar to Megan's in the sense that not even existentially, but in reality, my program is threatened, right, by what the governor-elect and the legislators in general want to do. And I guess I'm a little concerned by this sort of wait and see if they want to get rid of my program when they've literally said they do. And so I guess what I just want to put in everyone's mind is maybe to think about ways that you can, right, help support and to ask Eloise what things we can do. I know there's not a specific bill at this time, right, but Patrick Morrissey explicitly, right, singled out certain kinds of programs, and as did our president-elect, right, for elimination, and it relates to DEI bills, it relates to obscenities, all of these things. And I'm just concerned that we will just sit and wait, and then I will watch my program disappear because we didn't do anything. And I'm really nervous about that.
I understand. And it is something that we kind of go back and forth on. And I think from WVU's standpoint, we do have people that work in Charleston all the time, that like Travis Mullahan and he and others. And so they kind of keep their finger on the pulse there. They kind of see what's going to happen and who's supporting what. And lots of times it has to do with whose name is on the bill, whether they think it's going to move anywhere or not. So I'm not saying that we all should just sit around and wait and see what happens. One thing that we were always encouraged to do is to reach out to legislators that you know or that you feel like you can be in contact with and express your concern for different things. We all should be doing that all the time for whatever the issues are that we think might come up. But from the WVU standpoint, I think we kind of wait and see a little bit closer to the time. But I understand your concern, and particularly in the field that you're in.
Yeah, and I would just like to see WVU as an institution separate from the legislative bodies support and for other faculty to say, hey, these programs are important. We don't want to see them go, right? And just see a little bit more enthusiasm for supporting certain programs that are existentially threatened. So,
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Eloise? Thank you, Eloise. Next on the agenda is a report from the faculty representative to the Board of Governors, Leslie Cottrell. Leslie.
Hello. Leslie Cottrell, School of Medicine. So the BOG met recently prior to the break. And just as a quick background, that's typically a Thursday that starts at 10 and goes, and then has an event of some sort that highlights students and our faculty. Many of you have participated in those. And then a Friday full day. For those who are new, it also includes public sessions that are posted prior. So I'm just putting out that plug because there's been many points of discussion. In this report, I try not to reiterate exactly what's in the minutes, so it's not completely duplicative. But just wanted to give that background in case you didn't know that and you could be there or you're comparing notes. So with that being said, a couple of things that we wanted to highlight. For the Thursday meetings, in general, we reviewed some data and other information that really started to help the BOG in terms of what it wants to do, which is prioritize certain strategies. In the last few faculty senate, it has been noted that the BOG sets those priorities or identifies those. So a lot of data has been requested and has been shared in that session. And that includes many of the things that have been discussed and requested here. In the regular meeting, just kind of reiterate the presidential search. We're in the quiet period now, so applications are going in. Dr. Harris had mentioned that. That started October 12th, and so we won't hear too much about it. Frankie had just reiterated the interest of summative characteristics of the applicants, and Dr. Harris was receptive of that and noted that she would work on how that would happen, right? And then that quiet period is likely to continue into late winter, just to give you a little timeline. I'm not going to say too much about this, but one piece of information that we received is just BOG received some educational pieces. So they received some specifics about the BOG review, what that process is like, how often that happens, how does that compare to the annual review of programs and courses. And that's really helpful. As you all know, new members come in, including myself, who aren't faculty. And that's always good. And what criteria is used. We did have some great news, fantastic news, that we do not have to utilize the travel company when we're making arrangements for travel anymore. And so thanks to the procurement office. Yes, fabulous. So this is a situation. So someone in the procurement office had heard, as well as many people have heard us really complaining and saying this doesn't make sense and this is difficult. And they made a change, made a proposal that has gone through the system. So the BOG approved it. Where that stands then is there's going to be a public comment period. It's already started November 25th through January 26th. They'll incorporate any remaining remarks on that. But so as of, like, if you tried it today, you'd still have the travel company, but it's going away. That's great news. We then received certain presentations from different entities. Last time I mentioned, our robotics program, sometimes it's other groups throughout the university. This time it was the foundation. It was very helpful in terms of where they stand funding, what are their different funding levels, how do they allocate that funding to certain things. So that was very helpful. A lot of it was information based. And that was the highlights I wanted to share out from the minutes that people already have access to.
Any questions or comments for Leslie? I remind everyone that the link to the survey where you can provide feedback to both Leslie and Frankie, who represent us at the Board of Governors, is on the agenda. Thank you. So the people online are having difficulty hearing people who are speaking at the side mic. So please make sure that you get really nice and close. Share those germs. Thank you. That's all I got. Okay. President Gee is traveling today, so we will not have a report from the president's office. Next up is a report from Interim Provost Paul Kreider. Provost Kreider.
Good afternoon. Good to be here. I hope you all had a restful Thanksgiving holiday, and I wish you all a successful and productive end of the semester. My report is very short, and then I will turn it over to Mark Gavin to discuss some numbers with you. And then we had a request from the Senate leadership to have a process and timeline update on our HLC accreditation. But my report is basically, today is the first day that Dr. Jerry Wallace starts as campus president at Potomac State College. Yay! We are very happy about that. And I hope that you all extend to him a hearty welcome to the WVU system. And I wish him some great success. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Gavin.
Good afternoon, and I will be short as well, but have two different pieces of information to share with you. One is an enrollment update. I know this has been an active request for a while. We were waiting for our Hep C numbers to be certified. They have been. So this is hot off the press from their perspective. I'll just briefly review the numbers. I want to do it by campus and then in total, as well as break it down by first-time freshmen and then total enrollment. With regards to first-time freshmen, on the Morgantown campus, which would include downtown campus as well as HSC, our total enrollment, our first-time freshman enrollment for this year is 4,129. And I will note that that is about 200 short of what we had projected in our budget. With regards to Potomac State College, the first-time freshman sits at 316, and this is 74 short of what we had projected in our budget. And then with respect to WVU Tech in Beckley, that number is 279, which is 33 short of what we had projected. When you total that up across our system, we have first-time freshman numbers of 4,724, which is 307 short of what we had projected for in our budget. Now, the good news is that when you look at total enrollment, we closed some of that gap by having better than projected retention numbers. I think I just checked with Evan before I came up here, and we sit at 83.4%, which is right around a 2% growth over last year in retention. So through the efforts of many, including our faculty, we were able to close some of that first-time freshman gap by way of returning students. So when we look at our totals there, total enrollment, again, on the WVU campus, Morgantown, to include main campus and HSC, our total enrollment sits at 22,939, which is only 78 short of what we had projected in our budget. When you look at Potomac State College, that total enrollment is 867, which is 89 short of what we had projected for our budget. And then with respect to WVU Tech in Beckley, that total enrollment is 982, which is 35 short of what we had projected for total enrollment. In total, that then gives us system-wide 24,788 students. And that leaves us just at 202 short of what we had projected for budget. The good news is that that is a close enough number that budgetarily we can address that through normal processes. So it doesn't foreshadow any measures to address that shortfall because it is small enough that we can accommodate it this year in FY25. So that is the enrollment update, unless there are questions. Well, we'll hold them till the end, I think. And then let me jump into the second piece, which is with regards to releasing some of our reserve spend. So this has been a project that we've been working on for a while. We needed the FY25 budget to settle a little bit before we could figure out just how much we could release this year, or at least the first tranche. We did in just the week leading up to Thanksgiving. We notified the deans for main campus as well as HSC that we were authorizing $2 million of release in reserve spending. So that has been communicated. We would expect that the deans have begun communicating that to the relevant faculty. And if that hasn't happened, it should shortly, and we'll follow up to make sure it has. A little bit about what is, that $2 million encompasses a lot of things, but what we focused on in terms of prioritizing is spending that would directly benefit faculty. So when we solicited requests from the deans, we asked to include in the list things that would, again, this would be things like faculty travel, purchases of equipment or materials that would support research. But we asked for that to be prioritized. And when we went through the list and made our, released that $2 million, we focused exclusively by intent on things that would directly affect and impact in a positive way the faculty. Very simply put, the intent is to be able to support faculty activity and purchases that otherwise would be unavailable through the regular budgeting process. Although there is some such purchases and travel that are built into the budget, we realized that releasing reserves adds to that, and that was the intent of this $2 million. We do have additional requests that we couldn't fund yet that exceed the $2 million. We will monitor how we perform in the FY25 fiscal year. And if we see some openings for making a second round of release, we will certainly do so and have the request in, and we'll be able to prioritize accordingly. But again, I wanted to be able to report that we were able to release, as of now, $2 million in reserve spending that hopefully and is intended to benefit faculty directly. And that is it. And with that, I know we're going to hold questions for the provost office till the end, so I'll ask Lou Slimak to come up, talk about HLC.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Pleased to address you today as the institution's accreditation liaison officer with the Higher Learning Commission. WVU will have our comprehensive 10-year reaffirmation of accreditation visit with the Higher Learning Commission this coming March 31st and April 1st of 2025. That includes all of our additional locations, so Potomac State, WVU Tech, all the health science additional campuses, as well as all modes of delivery to our online programs and our online campus as well. Today I was asked to provide an update with the process, timeline, and how faculty contribute, so I will do that with you now. The primary work for any accreditation visit is the completion of a large self-study. The self-study is what we provide to the HLC as a team for review to ensure that we are meeting the 5 criteria for accreditation, their core components, and their subcomponents. The process to draft that self-study began this past spring in 2024 using the 2018 self-study as a template. I was involved in writing that self-study, so I was confident with its results. We had a clean visit for those of you who were here and don't remember or weren't here. And the criteria have not changed significantly since then. From there, for each criterion, dozens, and I do mean dozens and dozens, multiple dozens of people contribute text and evidence to each of the core components for those criteria. Those are any positions from all of our operational and functional areas, faculty, staff, administrators, all across the institution for everything the institution does to support its faculty, staff, and students. From there, I then aggregate that into an argument for that criterion. I share that with a group of executive leaders or people, key stakeholders for that criterion who review that, typically about 8 to 10 people. They have, a couple weeks to review that, provide me additional feedback on that particular component and the evidence we are compiling for that criteria. Once we have a completed draft for the criteria, that is shared with strategic communications and marketing for review and editing, and then entered into the assurance argument system for the HLC, where it then is as finalized as it gets. We can make edits still, and I will make edits continuing all the way up until that time blocks in February, but essentially it has been finalized at that point. We also link hundreds and hundreds of documents. Everything has to be PDF'd because of HLC regulations. So hundreds and hundreds of PDFs per criterion, so that they have evidence for everything we say the institution is doing. Faculty have been contributing to that process all along the way. This body, for example, contributed to criterion 1, 3, and 4 already. The work of the Jeff Committee, the work of the Curriculum Committee, the work of shared governance, faculty welfare, the work of the leadership teams, all of those contribute to the criteria, as well as faculty in their normal roles in doing assessment, program coordinating, advising, taking care of students, and just doing what it is we do as an institution. You can continue to contribute in several ways. Once the self-study is complete, I'm expecting that to be in January. We will have a several-week review period where we make that available to the full institutional community. And in this case, it is not just our faculty, staff, and students, but legitimately anybody in Morgantown or the state who feels that they have a stake in the institution. That self-study will be open for review. There'll be a feedback process. You can say, hey, I've said something that's erroneous. You didn't include this great thing that I have done, have had this impact. The feedback I always give everybody who's assisting me in this process is an institutional level review, and we are looking for institutional level impact. So something that I would want to focus on, typically we have 2 or 3 sentences to condense all of the work of a unit for 5 years. So all this tremendous work is reduced to just 2 or 3 sentences and see this at the annual report. Be thinking about that kind of reduction of what you do, and if that scope of impact is there, I'm happy to have that feedback for inclusion in the self-study. The last opportunity to contribute and really the biggest part of this timeline is in March. We will find out from our HLC team what any special areas of interest and focused meetings they will have with the campus community. They will have several general purpose open meetings they have just to kind of have anybody drop in and speak, as well as meetings on topics. Typically, meetings on topics are previous deficiencies. We have none to address this year. So I don't know what those will be, and I won't know what those will be until March when they notify us. In that time, I will have some kind of campus-wide communication to say what those meetings are going to be on, what those topics are. And I would just like to underscore now, and I will continue to kind of call for your involvement to come to those meetings if you have knowledge or interest in those topics, and present what you know and what your experience has been like. More so than trying to prep you for any particular kind of frame, the best thing we can do is have a lot of people turn out and show their pride and their involvement and their investment in the process. We had a great turnout in the 2018 team. Was really impressed by how many people came and spoke passionately for and against the institution. It is just good to see that we care one way or the other. So when we have that, I will post what those topics are, invite you all to come and make an impact by showing that you are interested in the institution and its accreditation process. I've kept it high level because accreditation is exciting. If you have particular questions, I'm happy to address those here. I'm also happy to address any of those offline if you'd rather do those in depth offline.
Joe Jones, College of Creative Arts and Media. Lou, real quick, you said it's a 10-year accreditation, but the last one was in 2018. Are we doing it early for a reason, or?
So this is a detail. We are on what they call the standard pathway, Joe. The standard pathway, all pathways have 2 visits. The standard pathway has a visit at the 4-year and at the 10-year. So you get 2 over 10. The 4 years is supposed to be a lighter visit. It is a check-in. It does not differ in substance or practice at all on the standard pathway. The reaffirmation of accreditation visit is in fact where the HLC makes a determination to reaccredit you for another 10-year period. We will still have another visit in 4 years unless we shift paths, but it is the 10-year reaffirmation that only happens once every 10 years.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Scott Fleming, Chambers College, and this is actually from Mark. Chance to get up there. So I heard the numbers, and I tend to my mind immediately goes to like variance analysis. So we got this 200 person gap overall, but really the 200 is largely driven by the first time freshmen, which is going to amount to about an 800 student per year issue going forward. Do we know, or do you have the numbers broken down by what those are driven by? Is that in-state? Is that out-of-state?
We are working on those. I do have, I don't have them right now, but those numbers can be produced. Let me check with enrollment to see how they would like to present them. I do know, I don't want to speak for him, but Steve Hahn, who is our VP for Enrollment Management, I believe is slotted to come visit with this body in January, if I'm not mistaken. And if we don't address that by then, I'm sure he could speak to the issue.
So I asked this for 2 reasons.
Sure.
Number one, there's a lot of other schools that are being proactive by extending in-state tuition to surrounding counties, and therefore they are not seeing a decline as much as perhaps what we're doing. They're being very proactive, not reactive about that. And number 2, I'd like to understand that 200 individual first-time freshman gap. We are not approaching the cliff yet, and I just want to see if we priced ourselves out of the market for out-of-staters.
Sure. Well, let me address that in a couple of different ways. The 200 was for total enrollment. The first-time freshman gap system-wide was about 300. Your point still stands, obviously. I think so again, I don't want to punt this question entirely, but I think Steve Hahn, when he comes and visits, will be able to give you a more complete and informative answer. That said, we are regularly working with him, so that you haven't necessarily seen proactive strategies publicly doesn't mean that we're not considering them and developing them. I would point to, for example, and I want to say that President Gee referenced this in his last meeting here, that we have signed an agreement with Southern West Virginia Community and Technical College, and we're hoping to replicate that across several CTCs throughout the state that we think will create an easier pathway that will result in greater enrollments from transfers from the community and technical colleges to the WVU system, whether that's Morgantown, WU Tech, or Potomac State. That's one example. But I think when Steve comes and visits, you'll also hear a range of strategies that he is developing and moving toward implementation. Price sensitivity, again, I'm not going to speak authoritatively like I have the answer to this, because I don't think any of us do. He is actively looking right now at essentially a pricing sensitivity or elasticity study to answer that question. Very recently, as in like maybe a year ago at most, I know EAB, who is one of our consultants external who tracks these, felt very confident that we were priced appropriately, if not had some room to make some adjustments, but wouldn't suggest that pricing was an issue. I think, while you are seeing some perhaps enrollment gains at other institutions around the state, I think we all had some of the same pressures, which is, certainly FAFSA didn't do anybody any favors, I think. And I don't want to, I do know that, and I'm not going to attribute this to any particular university because I haven't dug in enough. I'm not sure any of us have, but I know in some cases, you can certainly get enrollment gains by doing things like potentially dropping a price or extending in-state pricing to, say, a metro area or surrounding states or areas. I think what you might also see with some of those institutions is relaxing some admission standards that give them an immediate enrollment boost and will soon turn into retention challenges. So I would offer a caution when you see some of those immediate enrollment gains to let's look a year or two later to see what the retentions look like. We're trying to find that balance, I think. What's the right price point? What are the admission standards that allow us to serve as the land-grant institution, but don't soften up enough that we're going to have major retention issues and put those kinds of challenges on campus. So that was kind of a wandering answer that hits a lot. I
No, that's
understand.
good.
I understand the concern, but they are things that we are addressing on a weekly basis. There are a number of us that are involved in these kinds of conversations about. I think the safe thing to say would be, we recognize that we had a drop in first-time freshmen relative to our projected budget. We are actively developing strategies to counter that, as we know that there will be some demographic challenges coming up and others. So we're working on ways to counter that.
And my last little comment, and this is going to sound a little crass, but what everybody's probably thinking. When they look historically for price sensitivities, one of the confounds is that of how winning was our athletic departments and programs, because it's going to have an impact, and it's unfortunate. And we know we've seen it before in the past when it's been positive, and we're going to see it again, given this current situation. So I just hope that's taken into consideration.
I think everybody is very well aware of that, and that is a yes. Thanks. Yes. Doug Terry, you are up.
Hello, I'm Doug Terry at WVU Tech, and I was just wondering if you could repeat the enrollment numbers for Tech just to make sure I have them written down correctly. And another question I have is about the reserved funds, and I was wondering if those are also available for Tech, and if so, how might faculty access those funds?
Sure, and I'm sorry, we had to grab the paper. I left it in my seat. Turned out to be a bad decision. With respect to WVU Tech, those enrollment numbers for first-time freshmen, we had 200. You have 279, which was 33 short of the projection, and for total enrollment, 982, which is 35 short of the budgeted projection. Yeah, but that's worth mentioning. So if you actually go to the HEPC website when they release those numbers, you'll notice a slight difference because high school access is included in the numbers we report to HEPC. That is per their requirements. When we look at projecting from a budget perspective, we don't include those because they don't really add to our budget that much. So if you subtract out the high school access as well as across the main campus and others, there are a couple of other special categories of student status. Some is professional development and others are senior citizens taking coursework. Important, but not really contributing to our budget. So we do remove those when we're talking about the budget numbers and how we do relative to projections. They won't match up perfectly with HEPC because we subtract those out. But the bulk of the difference between the HEPC report and what I've just given here is the high school access students that we've removed, which account for a good chunk. I think there was a second question about the reserves. Yes, about reserves. Right now, the reserve access was for main campus Morgantown and for HSC. We did not extend that yet to Potomac State and WVU Tech. I know one of the issues, there have to be an availability of funds, not in a deficit position. I don't know if WVU Tech and Potomac State have sufficient reserves right now or what position they're in. That's certainly something that we'll take a look at. But with respect to this first release of reserves, it did not include the regionals.
Thank you.
Sure.
Stefania Stanisha, Davis College. I was wondering if you have the number, or if you remember the number. Are we doing better than last year? Or because you talk about the projection in terms of budget projection, but in terms of the number from last year?
Yeah, I don't have those numbers right offhand, but I will tell you that we do, it's a lower, those numbers are lower relative to last year. And that was, again, we accounted for that budgetarily as well because of some of the demographics, some of the FAFSA, et cetera. So I didn't bring those numbers, so I apologize, but I know that we are certainly down relative to last year as we see a lot of institutions suffering the same. Sure. Vlad, online? You have a
Yes, Vlad Katsevich, College of Engineering. So exactly to the previous question. So last year enrollment was 24,200 for Morgantown campus. So you said this year, fall 2024, 22,939. So it means it's a drop of 5.2%. Is this drop related only to undergraduate students or also includes undergraduate and graduate students?
That's total. That includes graduate students as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
Amy Weisslogel, Eberly College. I had a question regarding the undergrad enrollment of international students, which from my perception seems to have dropped off substantially since the pandemic. And I was wondering if your projections basically have the continued absence of those students from our community, or is there any possibility that we might see a return to those?
So as we are building or moving toward building the FY26 budget, which begins with enrollment projections for next year, we have been obviously aware of the decline in international enrollment, and that's one area that we are turning our attention toward. So I'd mentioned Steve Hahn, our new VP for Enrollment Management. You know, he's got a lot of things on his plate right now, working with the rest of us, but he has engaged Amber Rignoli in the Office of Graduate or of Global Affairs, and him leading us are actively developing some strategies that would turn that number around. So we're not satisfied with the decline in international and ready to give up on that. Far from it. We're, I think, doubling down on trying to turn that trend around.
Yeah, I would just think that it'd be very important to figure out what's at root of that, because it could be that there's something about how we're operating that is maybe unwelcoming to that demographic. So hopefully we can identify what that is and remedy it.
Yeah, I think it's multifaceted, certainly, and we're trying to develop strategies that would address some of those issues that have kept those numbers on the decline. But we're intent on turning that around. Things that are within our control. Yes.
Hi, Chris Latuma with the Davis College. So it's occurring to me, and I kind of wonder, because now that I've sort of not transitioned, but I took on a new role in like a recruiter as a faculty, and I've been doing some of these recruitment events at the college level.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. All hands on deck, right? But one thing that definitely has come up from a few parents has been academic transformation, and will these programs continue to be here if I choose to send my child here? I don't know, has the university issued any sort of statements or any assurances about program? I know that we have had conversations about ongoing reviews of programs, but is there what's the messaging been to parents and students that are coming to visit campus?
So I think what I would offer would be this is, we certainly haven't issued a statement that, all programs are safe, but by the same token, we haven't said that programs are in danger either. We have moved out of what was known as academic transformation, which was an intense focus period and effort, into what has been described on many occasions. I was pointing over to Lou, but Lou, being led by Lou, which is an annual review check that then kind of stands in front of the 5-year BOG review. So, I think we would certainly not be in a position, and I will say, and I don't think the provost office nor central administration feels it would be responsible to take anything off the table, but we don't have any plans to do anything like what we went through with academic transformation. That said, part of the health check, the intent is to see what's working, what's not, and we have to manage our resources responsibly. So, I would certainly say that, if there's a program that is showing some concerns, we will engage with it through the 1-year checkup. We'll, try and understand what's happening that would cause those metrics to turn toward the negative, see if that can be corrected. But if it can't, we certainly couldn't and wouldn't give an assurance that that program would continue indefinitely. I don't think we can do that with the resource.
I don't think that's my question is but isn't there like a statement or something where you can provide a little bit of security to the parents? I'm not asking about us. I'm asking
Sure.
about the parents of students who are asking, is there is there a way in which you can say that WVU is not going under, right? Or choose a different program, or stay in the college. I don't know. Is there some sort of message that can come from the university that says that we made it to that's not providing an assurance that this will not continue to occur? But I mean, I have had parents ask me, they know there are parents out there that are looking and that are using that as a determining factor to come to WVU, right?
Sure.
And so it seems like if we're worried about enrollment, that might be a message that could be received pretty well, at least in terms of, parents who are visiting and thinking, okay, at least the university isn't burying their head in the sand and they're acknowledging up front that this is still maybe an ongoing issue. So, I mean, it's not about us at this point. I think it's about bringing the next generations here, right?
Yeah. Well, in some ways, I think the same answer could be extended to parents, but let me address it more succinctly and more directly to the parents. Here's what I would offer, and I'm sure others would have something to say and, maybe word it slightly differently, but, we have over 300 programs right now, and that is post-academic transformation. We have an incredibly diverse range of offerings, and that's not going to change. Will there be programs that, see a little scrutiny from time to time if the metrics warrant it? Sure. But, I think it's safe to say that diverse portfolio of programs is not something that is going to change.
Thank you.
Let me just add, if I could, please. We have our leadership here. Our Vice President for Strategic Communications is in the room. She's heard what you've had to say. And I think we can take that and we can have a discussion about a university message, see what we can do and what's appropriate. And I think what you can say to parents is that we have no indication that our programs are going to go away. That's not a statement. The next honest statement is whatever program does go away at some point in time, we always are obligated to teach out the students in that program. So the program will not go away while your student is here. So I think those are fair statements.
And I think that's how I personally approached it. I'm fortunate to be in a program I feel like it's pretty strong. But anyway, regardless, thank you. I think that would be a good idea, like have a blanket message. But okay, thanks everybody.
Good. Thank you.
I do want to confirm that Vice President Hahn will be addressing this group in January. And so that would be a good place to ask questions about enrollment strategies and messaging. We will be here then. All right, now a report from Erin Newmeyer, Associate Vice President for Strategic Partnerships on the First Day Complete program.
Hello, thank you for your time today. So I want to start by giving an update on the fall programs. It was the first semester that we rolled out what is considered an equitable access program. So just a reminder, we call our program First Day Complete. It is with our partners, Barnes & Noble. It's an equitable access program that provides all required textbooks, both traditional and digital, lab manuals, access codes to undergraduate students on a rental basis. For full-time students for the fall semester, for those taking 12 or more credit hours, the cost was $360. For part-time students, which is 11 or fewer credit hours, the cost was $168. As far as participation rates for the fall semester, we had 44% participation rate, which is 10,423 students who remained enrolled in the program. We had a 56% opt-out rate, so 13,131 students chose to opt out of the program as it didn't make financial sense for them. We also had 372 full-time students who opted out, priced out their textbooks, their course materials, and opted back in after initially opting out. As far as our program portfolio, digital versus print adoptions for course material, got a breakdown for all three campuses. WVU main campus here in Morgantown, 15.8% of the course materials were elected through faculty choice as to be provided digitally, which then left about 84.2% that were provided traditionally through physical textbooks. Tech, we had 10.1% who adopted their materials digitally or were provided digitally. And Potomac State, it was 22.2% that was chosen by faculty to provide their course materials digitally. Barnes & Noble has recently provided the total cost savings to those students who remained enrolled in the program. The FDC, so the First Day Complete course retail value that our students were provided was $4,704,000 and some change. What was billed through First Day Complete, so had they not purchased retail, was $3,644,256. So those 10,000 plus students who remained in the program saved about $1,060,000 by choosing to stay in the program. What I will also say is I have recently been working with our peers and my counterparts at Big 12 institutions. The cost of our program is slightly higher than all of our peers, although we are in the initial stages. The majority of the conversations that they're having currently are how to drive down their program cost. 4 out of 12 institutions reported that they actually had a lower First Day Complete program cost for this upcoming semester than they did the current semester, because they have been able to play with some of the levers or the toggles that are available within the program. Increasing the amount of digital course material that faculty select can help us drive down the price and therefore the cost savings to our students. However, we run a program that it is faculty's choice as far as how that material is to be delivered. Several institutions require the digital product to be delivered if that is available to the students in order to reduce costs for them. As we've rolled out our program, we wanted to ensure that faculty had the right to make that decision on how they preferred course material be delivered to students. In addition, OER plays a big part and component in the program. I actually have pulled together a small team of folks to meet tomorrow morning to start talking about how we can build OER into our overall portfolio and increase access to digital course materials. Dean Karen Diaz is involved. Dr. Witter is involved in that conversation. I would welcome others who would like to be active participants and figure out how we can help drive down costs to our students for all course materials. Just a note to wrap up the fall semester. This is a rental basis program. Students are asked to return their materials. Again, it helps us deliver a lower cost program to our students for the fall semester through December 20th. So they can start returning at any point through the month of December, but last day to return is December 20th. In addition, we are also starting to communicate about the spring semester. So it is that time. You guys should have already been receiving communications, multiple communications about adoptions. We are currently at an 81% adoption rate for faculty in the courses that we have listed for the spring semester. The higher we can get that adoption rate, the more complete the package is going to be for a student when they go in to make an educated decision about whether or not to remain opted into the program. So if you haven't selected your course materials, or even if you just believe that you are using the same materials from one semester to the other and you haven't gone into the system, we ask that you please go in and make those elections sooner rather than later. It also permits us to order course materials through Barnes & Noble earlier so that we have them on the shelves when students go to pick up or purchase their materials, whether they do it through the First Day Complete program or whether they do it on their own. In addition, the spring selection email will go out to our students beginning on December 9th. The opt-out window is extended, so we want to make sure, again, students had ample time to make an informed and educated decision. It is opens December 9th and will run through December 24th, which is through the add drop date. Also, we heard our students loud and clear as we had made this request for the fall semester of Barnes & Noble. They had not originally been able to comply, but however, for the spring semester moving forward, the initial email that goes out to our students will have a direct link for them to opt out of the program. So as soon as it's introduced, that link will be provided. Barnes & Noble did not include that in the original email last time, and has heard both from students, faculty, parents, and university administration alike that would be a necessary requirement for us moving forward. In addition, communications and reminders will be sent multiple times each week via eNews, UNews, info stations, the Mountaineer Parents Club newsletter for both faculty, students, and staff. We also are working on some additional language for syllabi. If you are interested in that, it'll be emailed out. We'll work through Kim Becker-Walker in the provost office to get that out. And then we also are working on better communicating to both students, but also faculty on how to access that digital course material and through some of the systems. Barnes & Noble has worked with our 4 largest publishers on how students can access their digital items that are purchased through First Day Complete or even just off the shelf. We have 4 one-pagers, they're front and back, that have very explicit screenshots and instructions that we're going to provide in all the orders that are fulfilled. We'll also have them at the counters and the registers at Barnes & Noble, and we can email them out to faculty as well, just to ensure that if students are asking you guys how to access their materials, that you have the instructions readily available. Lots of changes for this spring semester. We're hoping for a smooth rollout as the fall semester did not go as ideally as we had hoped. Again, I want to emphasize this is just one of many tools in the toolbox for students to access affordable course materials. It is not the only answer. As highlighted by the conversation that we're going to have tomorrow about how to build out OER and other access points. So I am happy to answer any questions at this point, should you have any.
Frankie Tatt, College of Applied Human Sciences.
Yes, ma'am.
First, Erin, I just want to thank you. You've been very receptive to feedback that's come in about the experience in the fall. And so thank you for that. I did want to follow up on a couple of things that we had talked about in right at the beginning of the semester. And one was that the cost of textbooks were not available unless a student opted out, and then they could see what it was, then they had to opt back in if they wanted to. I'm just wondering if there's been any progress on that yet.
So Barnes and Noble is still working on adjusting and building out that platform. I don't know that it is going to be ready to roll for the spring semester. It will be ready for fall of 25. They have assured us of that. You know, we have talked to them about that. You can't make an informed decision and it makes it more complicated for that end user. So I will get an update on that, but I was not holding my breath for spring of 25.
I wasn't either, because I know that's a software thing, as is the next item, which was the ability in the selection screen, the adoption screen, to somehow indicate that one option a student is to use OER through our library, but that they could still get the hard copy book if they want to. In other words, it's a textbook that comes in a regular ebook, a hard copy, and our library has it as an ebook. But I'm interested in our students being able to choose, and that's always been kind of my approach. I put every way they can get it up there, and then they can do it how they want. And so, but they don't know that until the first day of class, and that could figure into the calculation. And this book happens to be $150, so as many of them are. So I'm just hoping we can still consider that. And as you're having the OER discussion, it kind of plays into all that. So this is sort of quasi OER.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you. And I think that's a very valid request and point. I do know that the initial conversations that I had with Barnes and Noble is that one option has to be selected as required, right? And that's the one that's going to be calculated into the overall program cost. They did not have an option in the system at this point in time to kind of indicate that there are other formats available, but it's really up to the student. So I will say they've heard us as we've kind of pushed the boundaries more than some other institutions and asking some questions. They have not told me no, as far as I just don't have that for the spring semester. And I don't know that I'm going to have that for the fall semester, as it is a Barnes and Noble system that we use, cloud-based system that we're driving decisions in, and it requires change on their end. So I will happily continue to drive that conversation, though, because I do think that that would be very helpful for students.
Thank you. And finally, I am aware that we get a percentage of something. We get some money back out of this deal. And I'm just wondering how we're using those funds, and are they being fed back into the academic side, or how is that going, since the savings for the students, it seems like at least some of that coming into the academic side would be helpful.
So the way that the Barnes and Noble contract works is it isn't necessary. I mean, it is a revenue generating contract for the university, but not in the form of students and textbooks. Revenue generating in the lease space that Barnes and Noble procures or leases from the university for the bookstore. And the revenue that comes back through the bookstore is more on retail side, but not the course material side of the house. So for us to drive that back in, what I will say is there is a small fund that goes back to libraries and OER and how we can use that. There's also a fund that is in the contract that is for quote unquote student support services. And there's money that comes through in the form of scholarships back to our students for textbooks and course materials for those that can't afford it. And that is need-based.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Matt Valenti from Butler College. I think my question is very similar to Frankie's third question, I think, which was about the finances. Maybe if you could explain a little bit more about the arrangement. I think my concern is I used to go out of my way to try to find low-cost options for my students. And does that matter anymore? If I would think that the cost is going to be highly dependent on the selections that the faculty make. So if we all pick the most expensive book, is that going to be different than if we all picked the least expensive book?
Yes, absolutely it is. And the way you choose to deliver that the format of that textbook as well. So what I was saying is some of the other institutions that have a lower total program cost for their students, they're primarily delivering those materials, if available, via digital format. And so the full-time student cost at some of these other institutions, one, they have a higher participation rate, and two, the program is a much more affordable program but they're 80 to 90% digital. And their options for their students are in the 160 to 170 a semester range for a full-time student. So yes, it is very much dependent upon the selected materials from faculty. It drives the cost of the program. I will also say some other institutions are experiencing bloat from equitable access programs, because what is happening is faculty are like, great, it doesn't matter what I select, it's all included. Well, it is for that semester at that price, but as you continue to model that out, and where they used to just have a required book and maybe 2 recommended course materials or optional, they're like, well, I'm just going to make it all required. Well, now you have 3 required course materials. And so they're seeing, some institutions are seeing, their program price increase because they're adopting more materials than they had previously. And so it's that, it's the a la carte option versus the buffet. They call it the buffet option of equitable access. Put it all in there. Let's make it all one cost. But they might not even be cracking some of those materials or using them as required.
So like, just to follow up, like if we all picked the most expensive book in our class, I mean, would it end up like the university would end up having to, pay something for the difference, or is it just that the cost might go up in the following semester?
The cost is going to go up the following semester or potentially the following academic year, and the burden is going to be on our students. Yes.
Hi. Oh, go ahead.
Hi there, Catherine Fonseca, University Libraries. I'll just start with a comment around encouraging digital access, and just recommend that faculty look into student preferences. They tend to be print. I say that as someone who collects and acquires materials. I have a question though around these savings, and how Barnes and Noble calculated those savings. My understanding is these first day complete equitable access models, I like to call them flat fee models, they tend to be inflated, and that's because they calculate their savings based on IPED estimates, which is usually a broader swath of materials that First Day Complete provides. So things like laptops, equipment, course packs. So equitable access doesn't actually stack up when actually compared apples to apples and looking at actual student spending for categories of materials supplied by these programs. My question, therefore, is, are there plans in place to independently verify the advertised savings of First Day Complete or reported savings of First Day Complete and track them over time independently? Essentially looking to ensure claims about benefit savings are backed up by independent evidence.
So what I can tell you is that my hope is that the small group, that committee that is meeting tomorrow, can start poking some holes in some of the information that's being shared with us, or at least validating or verifying it. So I think as we have a conversation as an institution about holistically what course materials look like, including digital OER and things like that, and we validate some of those numbers, then yes, that would be the goal. So don't know that I have that information readily available for you today. But I think after having some conversations with peer institutions who have been through this cycle more than one semester, they have been willing to share some readouts and reports that they're requiring of their vendor to increase transparency and kind of share some of that similar data. So the hope is that we would do that with Barnes & Noble and hold them accountable in that regard as well. It's also why I'd like to drive the conversation about price. Because, I mean, if we as an institution allow Barnes & Noble to continue to push this program, which I think is a great option for some students, not all, right? They have to make an informed decision. We need to make sure that we're also, as an institution, providing alternatives. And that could be through OER or having conversations as this body about whether or not we should be electing or adopting digital material versus traditional courseware. And again, student preference is part of that, right? It's price, preference. It's a balancing act. But yes, that would be my goal. I do not have it for you today, but I would like to continue to push them and be able to share more information in the future with this body.
Hi, I'm Ralph Utzman from the School of Medicine and the Academic Technologies Committee. In the fall, early in the fall semester, faculty received notices about delays in students accessing their resources through the program. Were those primarily digital resources or physical resources or both? And what's being done to make the rollout better so those delays don't occur again in the spring semester?
So the answer is all of the above. We had a little bit of the perfect storm, and that's why I said I hope that the spring semester goes smoothly for everyone. What I will say is we had one large publisher go offline one day, which shut everybody down, not just at WVU, and it prohibited access. We also had some access code issues, which is why we've developed the 4 one-pagers for our 4 largest publishers to really educate students how to go in early, check access, and make sure your materials are available and readily available for you at the start of the semester. So I also have heard mixed review, and I think it's on both sides, that there was even some situations where we had traditional course materials not available on the shelves. Some of it was due to publishers and being able to access and order. Some of it was due to late adoptions. It was, again, a mixed bag. So I will say we've worked with the provost office. Kim has done a fabulous job, hopefully communicating. We've been trying to communicate more frequently with faculty. We've been empowering the Barnes & Noble staff. I'm sure you guys have heard from Amanda Johnson and Emily recently to get out ahead of the messaging, kind of give you an idea of what's coming instead of just, hey, it's open, but this is kind of the process and we need you guys to help us, engage and participate in that. Some of it's education on the student side. We didn't necessarily in Barnes & Noble, the way that they communicated probably wasn't the most efficient rollout plan for our students. And so how do we better inform them? So our communications plan, which Callie Nealis has worked to build a really robust and collaborative plan for the spring semester, it's all inclusive. It is faculty, it is staff, it is parents, it is students. It is everything from here's what you need to do now, here's what's coming next, here's what you should have done yesterday, and oh, by the way, here are the next 5 steps. But we're trying to do it in manageable bite-sized messages so that students don't get overwhelmed at one point in time. So the frequency of messaging has increased. But we've gone with shorter, more direct messaging so that it doesn't get lost with all of the other mixed messaging. So to your point, we had a little bit of everything occur this fall semester. We have also, as an institution, required a staffing plan from Barnes & Noble, asked them, what does this look like? If you have 7,500 students, wait until after the first week of students out of 10,000 to make a decision on their books. How are you going to fulfill that in a timely manner? So they have tripled their staffing plan. We now have a dedicated resource on the Barnes & Noble team that only does first day complete communication. So when you have a general manager and you have a textbook manager who are literally on the front lines, fulfilling orders, answering questions, taking phone calls, that email was getting neglected, right? With questions, with concerns from both faculty, from students, from parents. And so to have someone that is their full-time job, it remains a priority and it can help us expedite a timely response.
Hi, Megan Light from the College of Creative Arts and Media. So I just wondered if you could speak to faculty, if anyone is assigning an out of print text, how does that impact? Or should that be a thing that we don't do anymore?
It should probably be a thing that you don't do anymore, but I'm not going to say that we can't do it. It just requires some extra steps. So what I would recommend is if you are assigning an out of print text that is going to require a little bit more of a lift, then your best friend should be Amanda Johnson at the bookstore at Barnes & Noble. She is wonderful. She has chased down materials or selections for faculty who have reached out to her that they did not think that they could get anymore. What I will say though, is it requires some extra TLC. So rather than just put it in the system, and I'm happy to share it with anybody afterwards, I would ask that you directly reach out to Amanda Johnson at the bookstore and make sure that we can get our hands on that material and it's not going to cause a delay for your students or for you and your syllabus for the start of the semester.
Catherine again, libraries. I'm interested to go back to that comment about bloat and Barnes and Noble's response to that of increasing or triggering an increase in the flat fee. So beyond the scenario that was already explained about, all faculty getting the most expensive textbooks, I'm more interested in kind of the external things that are out of our control. So I guess what guarantees are in place to maintain the flat fee of First Day Complete, considering the industry's legacy of sort of pricing inflation and price gouging, frankly.
Yeah. Well, I think we have a lot of things that are within our control, right? So I think the first is, if we can continue to have conversations about the best way to deliver materials to students and whether it's digital, traditional, or OER, a healthy mix, a collaboration and a healthy mix of that will help drive down costs. I will say Barnes and Noble has already committed to the academic year of fall 25 through spring 26 of holding flat. But the goal is if we could increase participation and maybe increase that digital mix a little bit or OER, that we would drive costs down. The institutions that I will say that are, first of all, that are going through what they call the buffet effect, that EA buffet effect, they're not all Barnes and Noble institutions. They could be Follett, some of them are others. So it would be fair to say it's not just Barnes and Noble. But what I would say is, they're having educated conversations with their faculty too about, is this required? Is it necessary? You've had it as recommended for 10 years. Just because it's, part of that kind of all-inclusive price, should it truly be required or should it be recommended? So, I mean, I think the answer is it's continued conversation and education on all parties. I think as an institution, I don't think, knowing that we're one of the higher flat fee based programs in the country right now, and our participation is low. I will say that for Barnes and Noble, it is low. University of Central Florida, I believe, by the way, they have a legislative code that they're not required or they're not permitted to do opt-in. They have to, or excuse me, they're not required to do opt-out. They have to be, they have to self-select and opt-in per state code. They have a 90% participation rate voluntarily because their program is so healthy and good. So the price is right. The students find value in it. They deliver it well. They have a healthy mix between OER, digital, traditional course materials, but it is like, that's what you do. I mean, they've done such a great job building out a really robust program. So I think, again, that conversation that we're going to start tomorrow morning, I would welcome others to participate. If you're interested, let me know afterwards. We as an institution have to own this some, and we have to have those conversations about how to best provide this service to our students. Again, this is just one tool in the toolbox. Thanks. Okay.
Frankie Tech, College of Applied Human Sciences. I was curious about your comment about out-of-print text because I've gotten pressure around changes of edition. And this semester, which I asked to remain with the older edition and not go with the new one, I try to drag my feet on that because this particular text gets updated frequently. In my mind, frequently every 3 or 4 years, and the price goes up significantly each time without much content change. And so to try and help the students, I tend to drag my feet on it. And I've even at times over the years tried to skip an edition. So, but I was told, and this book's been around forever, that they could no longer get the current edition and that I'd had to switch to the new. And I requested to stay with the current one. But that concerns me a little bit because automatically jumping to the new edition, there may be reasons that a faculty member wants to stay with that, and to say then they can't acquire it when you're saying they can acquire things that are out of print. And I get that it's more effort, but when you're talking 100 students, it concerns me because that lets Barnes and Noble make more money if they push us into newer editions.
To clarify my comment, I think I answered by No, we should not be doing that.
Sure, sure.
But if you want to do it, you need to start with Amanda Johnson and she will see if she can work her magic. There are no guarantees. And I do think a lot of it is based on availability and where they can get it. And can they get enough for all the, all the students and the sections and the courses that's required? They might be able to get some, but what if you can't get enough to offer that to everybody? So what I said is that requires some extra TLC. If that is the path that you want to go down, don't just put it in the system. We need to start having that conversation with Amanda to figure out whether or not it is reasonable and feasible.
For an addition, a new addition?
I
I mean,
think
I
it's-
didn't even know there was a new addition.
Yeah, I think it's both, right? Though it's both. I mean, it doesn't. These are your courses. You have selected these materials. You can ask the question, right? And we can figure it out as best we can. I make no promises. Barnes and Noble will do their best. Amanda's really good at trying to meet the needs. But I know there are times when they say no, they cannot get enough of a specific edition or even something that's out of print to offer students. So it doesn't mean that they won't try. So all I'm saying is ask. It is in your favor to ask. All they can do is say no, but I am all for pushing and having those conversations to make sure that we do the best that we can for our students.
I guess what I'm concerned about is that it's a carte blanche policy to push for the latest edition.
I
and
don't
to
think
say
it
that-
is. I think
because-
it comes down to access and buying. But you know what, though? I think, Frankie, I'd welcome that conversation. You and I can sit down and have that with John and Amanda and just better understand what their policy is and how that works and when they really push. Is it because, a trigger has hit, like, hey, I can't get enough of this, to meet the needs? And so therefore we need to look, or is it more financial on their end? But happy to have that conversation with you and John and Amanda. And I
Thank
know
you.
they've sat down with us before, so. Yep.
Thank you, Erin. We appreciate your time. Is there any new business? Avoid High Street. Yes, there's a parade this evening. Okay, go ahead, Megan.
Very fast. Is anyone here from Taco to talk about Spot and this new assessment?
The chairperson for Spot is at a different campus.
Yeah,
so I'm not
okay.
sure. Sherry, is Sherry
So that would
here?
be my only question. If we can in the future talk about A, why this rollout has been kind of a disaster, but B, there used to be an essay question, like a more open-ended
Mhm.
framework, and that no longer exists in this new version. It's only about discussions and how the discussions went.
I
And
thought there
so-
was an open response at the end. Oh, okay, both Sherry, Marina has raised her hand. Marina, can you address that question, please?
Yes, can you repeat the question about the essay question?
Is there an open response question at the end of the new survey?
Yes, so basically what you
One that
see,
you can update, like that you can change yourself.
The one that.
no, so there is a standardized question, and then the faculty had a time where you could select more questions from that menu. So that is what is happening on the new Spot. So the approved open-ended question that we had, that was approved by the Faculty Senate last year, and then departments and units have the opportunity to submit questions to be considered by TACO. And we have been working through the whole summer with the different units that have questions, personalized questions on the back in the past. And we optimize those questions, and those units have additional questions. If faculty wants to add questions into the survey, I think today was the first day that was launched to the students, but you should have done that in the past, and you will select from the menu. The other thing that is going to happen for the spring semester is that we will be having a poll, so units can request those ones. Am I answering your question?
Basically, Marina, I don't think there was an open-ended question that we could choose from.
There
And
was already one in there. There is one already to please provide any feedback.
That one exists, but that's not an editable or optional add-in question.
No, that's already in the survey.
Right, but it doesn't come up when it only comes up like when you preview it. It's very weird. Anyway, I can email you privately.
Yeah,
about
so I
this.
think,
Yeah,
I
we
think
can
I'm
let
gonna
her know.
That is more like an IT question, but I have seen my survey and the question was there. And also looking at my last year, I was part of the pilot. And I got they open-ended question and I got formative feedback from the students were, suggestions they were doing to do. They were willing to, they were asking me to change. So how about if I reach out to IT and maybe they can kind of clarify what you kind of see that open-ended question? Because it should be there. If it's the last one, is after the students agree, they make a statement, that it should be asked.
I think, yeah.
Would you like me to follow up with you after, via email? Is that
I'll
okay?
email you. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Thank you.
So I think what we will do though is that we will schedule a discussion in the early spring semester about how the fall rollout went. I think we have all experienced some bumps in the road, but we will ask for Taco to give us a complete report in the spring. Is there any other questions, announcements, or new business? Really just new business. All right, seeing no further new business, we are adjourned.